So, if you're like me, you've decided that it's finally time to make a change in your life. You're going to start losing weight. You're going to lose all that fat you've had on you for years. You're going to have a flat stomach. You're going to be looking skinny, fit, healthy, and life's just going to be fantastic. The only issue is that we need to figure out how we're going to actually do that because up until now, all we've really known is um, being fat, eating food, and just existing, and not not really having a clue about what exercise or diet or nutrition or any of this stuff is. And so now you've come online looking for some resources that are going to hopefully steer you in the right direction. And you come across all kinds of different techniques, and you find out it's not really as simple as you thought it might be at first. There's all these kinds of different diets, paleo, keto. There's this thing called fasting. There's intermittent fasting. There's water fasting. Some people say carbs are awful. You should never eat carbs. Some people say you shouldn't eat fat. You're trying to figure out, what a macronutrient is, what a micronutrient is. And then there's also some people that are telling you to exercise. What kind of exercise should you do? Should you go start running like David Goggins? Should you start doing high intensity interval training, hit training? Should you do weightlifting? And there's all these different people, and everyone seems to be pointing at each other and saying, "No, your way is wrong. Do it my way." And so, hopefully, I'm able to clear the air a little bit here and give you a little bit of clarity. Because in the let me just turn off that auto zoom. That was a little bit weird. I don't think I can turn it off. Oh well. Anyway, I'm gonna help you out because across hearing all of these different kind of strategies, and honestly, personally trying a lot of these different strategies myself to see what works, I found that the one that's gonna be the most common factor in determining you losing fat and you losing weight is going to be a calorie deficit. Now you've probably heard of that before. A lot of people say online that that's really the holy grail of fat and weight loss, and it honestly is. However, I don't think a lot of people really explain it too well, and they kind of just say, "Hey, if you want to lose weight, you should eat in a calorie deficit," and sort of leave it there and leave you to do your own research. And there's quite a lot of content out there and a lot of misleading information where talking about a calorie deficit actually bleeds into something else, and then it ends up being something completely different entirely. So my goal in this video is to explain to you what a calorie deficit is, why it works, how to actually do one correctly where you're not going to hate your life and then say that calories are evil, calories are the devil. And yeah, hopefully this really helps you out. So with that, I'll kind of get cracking here. So first, I want to talk about why calorie deficits work. And to really explain this, I'm going to use a little bit of an analogy here. So I'd like you to imagine that you have a pet. Let's say your pet is a cat. We'll call him Garfield. And Garfield loves food. Garfield is eating food all the time. I'm sorry for the noise. Garfield is eating all the time, and he's gotten quite chunky. He's put on a couple of pounds, and he's just kind of waddling around the house. And you've decided that all right, it's time for Garfield to lose some weight. And so, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? How do you get Garfield to lose weight? And I'm asking this as a serious question. I want you to think in your head right now, if you had a cat that was overweight, how would you get him to lose weight? And now let's apply that same question, and let's say it's a dog. Let's say you have a dog that is just, running around and he's put on a couple of pounds and it's time to shed a couple of those off. How are we going to get that dog to lose weight? Now, my guess is the most popular answer to this question is that, well, you just feed the dog or the cat or whatever the animal is, you feed it a little bit less than you are right now, and that'll make the animal lose weight. And that is generally what people do, and it really works. And so all a calorie deficit really is sort of applying that same concept, uh, but to humans. We really aren't too different from animals in that concept, and it's actually a little bit it's a little bit weird how when it comes to animals we that this seems to be a concept that's pretty universal and pretty straightforward, and we sort of lose that when we start talking about ourselves or people. But really, it is the exact same concept, and all a calorie deficit is a way of eating a little bit less that we can measure, and we're actually going to measure how much less we're eating, and we're going to control that because a very very big key in my opinion about calorie deficits is one, making sure you're eating in a deficit, and two, not eating in too much of a deficit, which is something that a lot of people do, and I will get to talking about that later. But the reason calorie so now that kind of hints at what a calorie deficit is, just eating a little bit less than you do right now. And the reason that works is because body fat is really just food that's turned into energy. And then this is sort of an oversimplification of the process, but basically when we eat too much food, so when we eat a surplus of food, what ends up happening is that our body says, okay, well, let's hang on to this food for later, and we store it as body fat. And eating in a calorie deficit is just our body saying, oh, okay, so, before we had a surplus of food, now we have a deficit of food, so we're going to make up for that with the, food, the body fat that we stored from before. And that's really why a calorie deficit is going to be the thing that works. And it honestly is that simple. And every diet that's out there, every fad diet or intermittent fasting, is all just different ways to achieve that goal of eating a little bit less. So, for example, intermittent fasting, the way they sort of achieve that is by limiting your eating window, and so there's less opportunities for you to eat, and so that kind of naturally pushes you to eat a little bit less. Something like keto, which is a highly restrictive diet, where you can only eat two of the macronutrients that are available to you out of the three. I won't cover what macronutrients are in this video because that's going to deserve its whole other topic, and I'll probably make a video on it in the future, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe. And anyhow, so that's one where you don't eat any carbs, any carbohydrates, and you just eat fats and protein. And a lot of times why that diet is so effective, again, is because it's highly selective. And so it's actually sort of difficult to find food that you want to eat. And that just kind of naturally makes you eat less food because there's just less selection. You're not really too sure what to eat, and there's just less variety. And so I can go I can go on for this for minutes and hours over how many different diets and how they all boil down to a calorie deficit. But what I actually want to do in this video is give you some actionable steps in order to allow you to sort of get started on working towards a calorie deficit. And so I'll have a couple of these throughout the video. I've never really done something like this, so it's a little bit weird. So I hope it's a decent format. But the first actual step of this video is that I'd like you to start keeping track of a food diary. So I do this myself. I track all of the food that I eat. Now that might set off alarm bells at first of tracking food and being super meticulous with it, and am I gonna have to weigh everything? And my answer is no. Honestly, to start off, is I just recommend getting a journal, a couple of sheets of paper. If you want, you can use the notes app on your phone, whatever it is, just somewhere where you can write down the food that you're eating throughout the day. And what you really want this to look like is you want to have your first column being the day. You can even put the time there if you want, but really you can kind of just keep it to a day, or you can make like each page is a day. However is the most convenient to you. Just have that first column be the day or the time. That second column is going to be what you ate. So if it is, let's say you had, some breaded chicken and some fries, you're going to say I had one breaded chicken breast and I had, um, you know, maybe a handful of fries, something like that. So the key here is you want to have what food you ate and roughly how much of it that you ate. Now, if you want to really get gung ho and already start weighing stuff, that's honestly a super awesome habit to get into. But I kind of recommend, if you've never done something like this before, you just start off and you keep it nice and simple. You put down the food that you ate, roughly how much of it, and you can use that however metric you want to use. If it is, one plate, like I have these plates here. So maybe I say I had a plate of fries, and then I had a plate of, um, I don't know, stir fry. This beef stir fry that I made. Let's say something like that. So that's just a way I can measure it, and I can have an idea of how much I'm eating, what I'm eating, and how often I'm eating it. And honestly, just keeping this food diary, not tracking, not meticulously tracking, like not weighing stuff, not even intending to like eat less, but just being conscious of what you're eating, how much you're eating, and when you're eating it, is honestly enough for people to start losing weight. There's some kind of auto regulation in our brain that once we sort of start tracking this kind of thing and we're aware of our eating habits, we start to sort of change it and maybe realize like, oh, maybe I don't need to eat that right now, or oh, I realize like actually I'm eating, let's say you have a bowl of chocolate covered almonds, right? And in your head, you go, oh, I just have, one or two, every so often. But then when you start tracking it, you realize you're actually eating like a package in like 2 or 3 days, right? And so it can be like little stuff like that. But anyway, this actionable step is super simple, and you can start doing this today. You can do it right now. Let's say you're eating something while you're watching this video. Just grab a sheet of paper and write down what it is, roughly gauge how much of it is, and just keep track of that. And that's just a really good way to start, a really good way to be on top of what you're putting into your body, just in general, not even in a weight loss sense, but just being aware of what you're putting into your body is a super critical thing for living a super healthy life. And it definitely is a big one for fat loss as well. Now, with that all said, and I will get into what a calorie deficit is a little bit later, but first I want to talk about one other thing, which is very, very important when it comes to losing weight and being in a calorie deficit, is actually your weight, right? And tracking that. So there are so many misconceptions I see about weight. I'm in, I follow a couple of different groups, and I kind of keep tabs on some weight loss communities. And one thing I see all the time is people saying, "Oh, I went out last night for drinks and pizza, and I weighed myself this morning, and I gained 4 pounds." Now, the thing is that you may have gained 4 pounds of weight, but that doesn't mean you gained 4 pounds of fat. So if we look at our bodies are 70% water. Now that means that 70% of the weight on that scale is just going to come from water that's in your body. So if you have more water one day compared to another one, that can account for a lot of your weight. So there's only 30% that's actually lean mass. And even then, that lean mass of your body, so that's the weight of your body with no water in it, that's going to be a large part, like your bones, that's going to be your organs, that's going to be your muscles, and it's going to be your fat. So even if we could weigh ourselves and eliminate the water, it's very, very hard to know, even then, how much, fat or muscle or whatever we're gaining or losing on a day-to-day basis. So the biggest thing is to not focus on your weight on a day-to-day basis, because honestly, you can fluctuate as much as like, I've seen as much as like 5 pounds day-to-day basis, and that does not mean you're gaining 5 pounds of fat and losing 5 pounds of fat in a day. That doesn't happen. Your body, that's just not something that's going to happen. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of outlier case someone can pull up, but for the vast majority of people in the vast majority of circumstances, that is just not something that's going to be possible. And so the best way, if you're going to weigh yourself and you want to actually weigh yourself in a format that's going to be effective, is you weigh yourself first thing in the morning before you've eaten or drank anything, and after you've gone to the bathroom. Because at that point, that is when you're going to be as close to your lean body mass, like your lean body mass, as possible, right? And the big key there is like you've had the entire time you were asleep in order to kind of process everything you've put into your body throughout the day, because just the food and the liquids that you consume are gonna impact your body weight a lot throughout the day. Like if you weigh yourself in the morning, at lunch, and before bed, that can, like, just within one day you can vary by like 3, 4, 5 pounds. Like I often will weigh in the morning, and then sometimes I like to weigh myself before bed for fun, and I will be 3 pounds or 4 pounds heavier than I was in the morning. And then the next morning I'll wake up and I'll have again like lost those 3 or 4 pounds. And if you want to try this yourself, just to see the effect it can have, is just go and drink. Weigh yourself right now. Write it down, and always weigh yourself on a digital scale. By the way, they're like $10 on Amazon. You have no reason not to have one. Get a digital scale. Weigh yourself on there right now, and then go and grab 2 cups of water. This right here, this glass, for context, this is like my hand right next to the glass. This is 2 cups of water. So drink, roughly 1 or 2 cups of water, and go weigh yourself. You'll have gained about a pound. And so just drinking a cup of water can, make you gain a pound. Now, that isn't a pound of fat you gained. That's not a pound of muscle you gained. That's not a pound of bone that you've gained. That's just a pound of water that, is going to go through your system. And so it's really good to be mindful that weight is going to vary a lot day to day. And the best way to keep track of your weight is to weigh yourself at a consistent time. And like I said, the best time of day to weigh yourself is going to be first thing in the morning, after you've used the bathroom, before you've had anything to eat or drink. Just hop onto the scale, weigh yourself, and keep track of that, and keep track of it over multiple days. Because even with, weighing yourself in the morning, there's still some variance that's going to happen there day to day. But if you start looking at like your weekly average, and then you take like, 4 weeks in a row and you look at that, that's when you're going to actually be able to see trends that are happening, right? Not day-to-day variance, but actual like weight trends. So is that trend going up? Is that trend going down? And to do that, we're going to go into the second actionable step. Maybe you can't start it right now, but you can do it as early as tomorrow morning, and that's going to be to keep a weight diary. So a body weight diary. So all you're going to do is you're going to weigh yourself in the morning before you've had anything to eat or drink, but after you've gone to the bathroom, using a digital scale. Like I said, digital scale is just the way to go. If you have a manual scale and that's the only scale you have and you can't afford to get a digital scale, it will work. But a digital scale, like, get a digital scale as soon as you can. That's going to give you the most accurate numbers, and you're going to be able to track it very closely. And all you're going to do is you're just going to track that first thing in the morning, and and that's all you're going to do. You're going to accumulate that, and the benefits from this aren't really going to be seen in like a couple of days, but over the course of a couple of weeks, you'll be able to really see like how your lifestyle and how your diet is going to affect your weight. And honestly, this is another thing too, that just tracking your weight will help you to lose weight, because you'll be more aware of what's causing those trends, what's influencing those trends, and you'll be able to actually keep tabs on, oh man, my weight this week, I'm like up 2 pounds compared to last week. Like each day I've consistently weighed 2 pounds more than I did last week. And maybe you had like a big Costco pizza binge over the weekend, and you kind of realize like, okay, maybe I should go a little bit easier on the Costco pizza next time that happens. Maybe instead of crushing half a pizza to myself, I'll just eat a quarter, something like that. But yeah, that's another suit like that. So the weight diary combined with the food diary are honestly two two little things that you can start doing today that are shown to have a serious impact on your weight and on your fat mass. So those are two things that if you do anything from this video, those would be the two things to do, and those are going to help you honestly achieve that calorie deficit. Now, in terms of an actual calorie deficit, we are already 20 minutes into this video, but explaining, I'd like to actually get now deep down into what a calorie deficit is and really explain it. So honestly, if you want to just take the first 20 minutes of this video and apply that, maybe leave this for later, feel free to do that. But if you're really interested on what actually is a calorie deficit and how does it specifically work, because me personally, that's how I understand and how I use things the best. If I have a really clear idea of, or a very clear understanding of how something works on a deep and complex level, I can better utilize it. So this part of the video is for the people like me who want the real deep and gritty explanation of how things work. So to explain a calorie deficit, I want to quickly go over what a calorie is. So a calorie is just a unit of energy. It's a way of measuring energy, right? And so when you look at like a food label, right, you're going to see how many calories are in that food, and that is just it's just a measure of how much energy it is. It's like, your toaster is going to use so much energy, your microwave is going to use so much energy. It's the same kind of concept. All food really is, if you want to look at it a very abstract and a very narrow way, is that it's just energy for our body to complete certain processes. Now there are a lot of different things that food does besides that, but that is one of the main things that food does, is it provides us with energy. And what fat is it's stored energy, right? So this is when we have let me back up a second. So during the day, you're gonna burn so many calories, right? It takes so much energy for you to go through all your daily processes, just like it takes your microwave or your toaster so much energy to perform what it needs to do. We consume so much energy to perform what we need to do on a daily basis. And this is going to vary a lot from person to person, which is super important. Your calorie maintenance, which is how much you burn during the day, is going to be different from someone else's calorie maintenance. And this is why you can't copy someone's diet bar for bar, because it won't work, because you are just two different people that are going to have two different energy requirements, right? And so what happens is when we eat in a surplus of food, or you can say a calorie surplus, so when we have a surplus of calories, so more calories that we burn during the day, our body says, okay, you know what? Really good idea we have here. Instead of, getting rid of this and throwing it away, we're going to actually save it for later, because there might come a day when we actually burn more calories during the day than we used. Or yeah, sorry, than we ate. That's when there's going to be days when we burn more calories than we consumed. And so we're going to keep some of this for later, so that when that day comes, we don't, our body doesn't shut down, right? Because what happens when when a microwave doesn't get enough power, it turns off, right? It just shuts off. Now, if our bodies just shut off, that wouldn't be the greatest. So we have this body fat that keeps us alive during times when we don't have food coming into our system, right? And the issue is when we have a surplus over a long period of time, like a slight surplus over a long period of time, we slowly pack on the pounds and slowly add pounds, and the next thing we know, we have this huge amount of body fat we're running around with, and we're like, oh my god, I need to get rid of this is not fun. So and so the key to that is the opposite. So what we want to do is we want to go from having that slight surplus every day that's gaining us weight, to a slight deficit every day that's going to lose us weight. And all we need to do is just eat a little bit less food, put a little bit less energy into our system, so that reserve tank of energy that we have gets depleted slowly. And the reason it has to be done slowly, and you can't just quickly burn through all that fuel, is because our bodies also have this concept where it's like, oh man, we're losing a lot of energy really fast. We better hold on to this, because we don't know how long it might be until we get more food, right? But if you go into, and that's when you get into like water fast territory. Again, that's a bit beyond the scope of this video, but basically just don't don't starve yourself. It's not a good idea, and it's just going to end up making your body want to hold on to your body fat even more. So a slight deficit is going to really be the key. Now, to be in a deficit and to even talk about how much a proper calorie deficit should be, I need to talk to you about maintenance calories. So your maintenance calories, I briefly mentioned this before, but your maintenance calories are how much energy your body burns per day on average. So the way we find our maintenance calories, it's um, well, first of all, what you can do is you can look at your food diary and you can compare that to your weight diary. And if your weight is staying the same over, the course of like a week or 2 weeks, then you know you're eating at a calorie maintenance. So you can look at the food that you're eating right now, you can look at your weight and if everything stays the same, then you're already eating at your calorie maintenance, which is really, really good. And that's really, really fun when we find that, because it's super easy to work from there, right? But the more, let's say you look at your food diary and your weight's actually going up, that means you're eating in a slight surplus. And if it's going down, that means you're in a slight deficit, which means your maintenance is going to be higher if it's a deficit, and it's going to be lower, pardon me, if it's in a surplus, right? And so finding our maintenance calories is one of the big keys to actually like effective weight loss, because then we know, okay, this is how much I can eat and I don't gain or lose anything. So if I eat under that, I'm going to lose. If I eat over that, I'm going to gain. Now, if you want a slightly more technical way of finding that, is there's online calculators, which a lot of people, the standard advice is go online, put your info into a calorie calculator, that's your maintenance calories. No, it's not. That is a guess at what your maintenance calories are. So if you want to get into like the calorie counting and everything like that, that's sort of like the next level of the food diary, is actually counting all of your calories. And for that, you need to have a food scale, and you will need to weigh out all your food. So if you can get away with it with just kind of using the food diary and not tracking super meticulously, absolutely do that. If that works for you, do it. Don't feel like if you're already losing like body fat, don't feel like you need to go and do it more advanced. If you already have it figured out, just stick with it. But if you're still running into some issues, I recommend like actually going and actually counting your calories, weighing all your food. I do that myself. Every single gram of everything that goes in my body is measured and tracked, so that I know exactly what's going on. And so the practical advice here, as opposed to the advice people give you online, is punch into a calorie calculator how much your maintenance calories, it guesses how much it is, and then eat at that and track that for a week or two. And if your weight goes up, then that means that you're eating too many. So I would dial it back 1 to 200 calories and then try again, and do that until you figure out. And of course, if you're losing weight, then you do it the opposite way. You eat a little bit, 1 to 200 calories more, and you sort of fine tune that until you find the number that keeps you roughly around the same weight, and that's going to be your maintenance. And as for how much your calorie deficit should be, so this is something I've kind of been alluding to for a while. Your calorie deficit should be anywhere between 250 to 500 calories, right? And it can even, in some rare circumstances, it can be more. But basically, what's going to happen is you're going to look at your body weight. You're going to divide that by 100, and that's how many pounds of weight you should be roughly aiming to lose per week. And then for each pound, it's a 250 calorie deficit compared to how much you're eating, right? So if you weigh yourself and you're 200 pounds, a solid rate of weight loss would be 2 pounds a week, which I'd say that that's even on the higher end if you're around 200 pounds. And so For pretty quick weight loss, you should be eating in a 500 calorie deficit. So you take your maintenance calories, subtract it by 500, and that's how much you're going to eat every day. And you just kind of do that for a couple of weeks, maybe a few months. I wouldn't really do this any longer than like 16 weeks before you eat at maintenance for a little while to kind of let your body sort of catch up. Um, but yeah, that's really all a calorie deficit is. Now, I would kind of recommend take whatever that 1%, like that 1%, because dividing by 100, that gives us 1% of your body weight. Kind of that minus 1 pound, right? Is sort of what you're aiming for. So if you're 200 pounds, you should be aiming for 1 to 2 pounds per week, and that's going to be 250 to a 500 calorie deficit. If you're 300 pounds, you should be looking for about 2 to 3 pounds per week, and that's going to be 500 to a 750 calorie deficit, and all this kind of stuff. Now, that being said, the goal of weight loss and the goal of like dieting, and this is really one of the key takeaways of this video too, and if you're watching until this point, thank you so much for sticking around. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to get through this as best as I can. But the key of weight loss is to keep this in mind, and weight loss dieting specifically. And it's that the goal is not to eat as little as possible. The goal is to eat as much as possible and still lose weight. That's really the goal. You shouldn't be trying to see like how much you can suffer, because that's really not going to help you, and it's not going to serve you in the long term, because you don't want to suffer long term. You want to try and set this up so that you're in a slight calorie deficit that you hardly even notice, but it's having really big effects on your body, right? So if you're starving, probably not doing it right, or there might be a couple of tips and tricks that you might just need that can totally change the way you're losing weight. But with that being said, I've pretty much set out and said everything that I needed to say in this video. It only took me just north of half an hour. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments under this video. I will go down and read them all and reply to them. And if it ends up being a bit of more of a complicated answer, I'm sure I can always make another video to sort of recap it. But yeah, so that is my video on the simplest guide to a calorie deficit. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some value out of it. And if you like the video, give it a like. And if you want to hear a little bit more of some advice from me on, fitness or lifestyle or any of this kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe to me here on YouTube. And if you'd like to reach out and ask me some questions directly, or even hire me as your personal weight loss coach, feel free to look me up on Instagram. It's Darren Espinola at Darren Espinola PT. Darren Espinola, just spelled the exact same as this channel name, and I should pop up. And yeah, thanks for sticking around, and see you in the next one.